live lean. I think people get excited for the aspect of like, oh, I'm able to do all these different things, but at a new startup, it's like you don't know what the future is going to hold, and it's good to like put yourself in the position of like, I need just what I need to survive, because really, like, the business is your livelihood, and so you should be really throwing yourself back into it to make sure it's going to put a lot of food on the table. And I'd say also is that like you're going to experience the highest of highs and lowest of lows, and you can't really let either affect you too much, or else it's just going to be a tough business going forward. And so you got to be prepared for it and just make sure you stay like even set in how you respond to things in the long run.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Kenny Rose. And Kenny started out his journey going to high school and college in San Diego, got a degree in financial services, and then went and worked for Merrill Lynch for a period of time, and then got introduced into the world of franchising and began working as a franchise broker in that world. Worked for a large broker for a period of time, and then decided to go out on his own, brokering franchises, and also had an idea on setting up franchises like an investment where multiple people could invest in it. COVID hit and decided to solely focus on that current business of investing with franchises, and business has gone from there. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Kenny.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Devin. Great to be here.
Absolutely excited to have you on. So I just gave a quick introduction to a much longer journey, but why don't we rewind and unpack that a little bit and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started growing up in San Diego, or going to high school and college there.
Yeah, for sure. No, that was a great intro. You covered like the whole span of the last 20 years or so. But backing up before, I'm actually from Arizona originally, and grew up there till I was 11 or 12. Lived in a little ski town in Colorado for 5 years after that, and then finished out high school and went to college in San Diego. So proud Aztec from San Diego State. And I honestly, like most kids going to college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I just knew I wanted to eventually like start a business like people in my family had, and there was an entrepreneurship major at the time, and eventually found my way into financial services because I caught wind of an internship at Merrill Lynch there. And my first question was, what in the world is financial advising? And so I started learning about it and realized just how you could help people grow and preserve wealth. And it just matched up with a lot of my long-term goals. Interned twice there. Actually, funny enough, the second time, my advisor actually got fired when I was working there. And so I was like, oh God, there's my in at Merrill Lynch. What do I do now? And my key card still worked. So I went in the next morning at 6 a.m. and just flung open the biggest corner office I could find and said, hey, my name's Kenny Rose. I'm going to be your next intern. And they're like, who the hell are you? And eventually led to get an internship with them the next semester, and then graduated, moved up to San Francisco, and was an advisor at Merrill Lynch up there, and realized I was not a fan of big wirehouses and just the big corporate culture. And also being San Francisco 15 years ago, we saw robo advisors coming. And so I was a little worried about the long-term longevity of that industry. And I ended up talking to a family friend. He was the CEO of a company that coaches CEOs, so a great person to talk to, until he threw me a huge curveball. He said, well, you know about franchising? And I was like, McDonald's, Subway, Taco Bell? I'm like, what do you know about it? And that's when I find out.
I'm going to jump in, just ask just one quick question, not to interrupt your journey. But so you were at Merrill Lynch and walk, or remind me, how long were you there for?
A year or two. So it was a pretty quick thing. I was not a fan of the lifestyle there, but it's also like when you're living in San Francisco and everyone's in tech and you walk in a suit, you kind of get a lot of dirty looks.
No, makes sense. And so my question is going to be is, kind of how did you come to you mentioned a little bit, but how did you come to the conclusion that, hey, this probably isn't the right fit, or isn't, the direction I want to go? Is it kind of just hey, I don't, I'm not the same as everybody else here, or was there a particular experience, or kind of how did you kind of come to the conclusion, probably want to go in a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there were a lot of things that kept adding up. Like when you hear enough of like, oh, I'm just going to use a robo advisor, you're like, oh, geez, maybe more people are going to do this. And then, just a lot of the culture, like a big finance bro place, just wasn't really what I was looking for. It kept adding up. And then eventually the conversation started about me partnering up with like a brokerage group there. So basically another team of advisors, like, oh, go kick it up to them. And then I realized what a lot of it was, that they set these goals like makeable at first and then absurdly high unless you like came from another firm, and so you kind of have to go get absorbed by another. And I'm like, oh well, that's going to be my book of business, and God knows what's coming up next down the road, so let me go find somewhere I can like own my future a bit more.
Hmm. So now, so with that kind of in mind, and makes sense, and kind of that progression to decide, hey, gonna end up going in a different direction. You said you kind of got introduced a bit to the world of franchising, and that sounded a bit of interest, or sounded like it was a good potential.
Yeah, honestly, I thought it was weird as hell at first. I was like, he's threw the effort at me. I'm like, what in the world are you talking about? And then I found out his company was a franchise. So I'm already like, okay, I don't know about that much about franchising apparently, because apparently you can franchise coaching CEOs. And I found out you can franchise every industry, and they pretty much are all franchised.
Hmm.
And he introduced me to the franchise brokerage space. It's kind of like being like a realtor or an investment advisor for helping someone find a franchise. So like if you woke up one day and said, hey, I want to own a franchise, I'd understand your budget, your skill set and goals, recommend a few brands that line up with that, and coach you through the research and purchase process. And I was part of the largest brokerage in the world. They had 150 offices at the time, and got to this point where like stuff was getting copied from my emails, thrown in the corporate training manual. May a co-author on an Amazon bestseller I don't get royalties for, and I'm like, I think I'm helping you more than you're helping me. And
Hmm.
around the same time, I heard of a company called Fundrise. And Fundrise had just raised their Series A funding. And basically, what they did was they made it so commercial real estate investing was now available for everyone. You didn't have to be an accredited investor, and you could do it for as little as a couple $100. And so I started tearing through the laws that were going on, making this possible, the technology and the business model, and decided I was going to do this for franchising, but really wanted to uh, build my own background first. And so I started my own brokerage and started off just writing free answers on Quora. And they sent those answers out to 40 or 50 million people, and touching base with journalists and stuff. And eventually I reached over 300 million people without a penny in ad spend. So I kind of had that franchise idea on the back burner, but then you alluded to it, pandemic hits, and read an article, people are gambling in the stock market because sports aren't on. And I was just like, okay, investing doesn't make sense anymore. People need something that's tangible and they understand and believe in. And that's what franchising is all about. And so that's when we created Franshares, being the first platform you can invest in franchises for as little as $500.
No, that's awesome. So you got in there, and I said, so maybe just rewind this a little bit, but you
Yeah.
were working for a large franchisor, kind of got familiar with that. And then you said, hey, I'm working hard, enjoy this, but it seems like, all of my hard work is, whether it's getting overlooked or not getting recognized, or, hey, there's a better path for me to realize, a lot of, or what I'm contributing by going down my own path. So you decided to kind of or go your own way, or to start something up now. Sometimes you get into that and you say, hey, it was a great leap and I enjoy it and it worked out well. And other times you're saying, hey, it's a lot harder to run my own business or do my own thing than I thought. And I kind of took everything else for granted. So kind of as you made that leap or kind of went your own direction, walk us through a little bit, how did that progress? Or was it everything that you thought it would be and worked out great and money was raining down from the skies, or you regretted the jump, or you're
Yeah.
teetering on the verge of bankruptcy all the time? Or kind of walk us through a little bit of how that went for you.
Well, anyone who starts a business doesn't tell you it's a nightmare to get started is lying to you. So, I was, I mean, honestly, when you're going from like one area where you do a certain role and then starting a business, there's so many other aspects to it that you might not have experience in, whether it's marketing, accounting, other types of finance, the sales process, website design, just so many things. And all of a sudden you get kind of over inundated with all these different things you have to do, and you eventually master it, which is something that really helped me eventually start franchise. I had experienced all these little things, but I would say like it was definitely peaks and valleys. Where I would say low point was my family, a big thing. Like once I turned 18, my dad shook my hand, he said good luck, and I had to go back to him and be like, I hate to ask, but I have to do it, like can I borrow some money for rent? And like he was actually totally fine with it, but like to actually like ask him was just like the biggest swallowing of pride. And so Yeah, there were definitely times where, like, if a deal hadn't closed right when it needed to, I would have been homeless. And then eventually, build something great out of it. So, yeah, tons of peaks and valleys, but I wouldn't have traded the experience for anything.
Well, sounds like it was definitely a great journey, and I think that's how everybody's progression goes. Is that you have those peaks and valleys, and you have the good times and the bad times, and it all comes along and makes it a fun ride. So yeah, so with that, so now as you're kind of diving into it, how long ago was that when you kind of struck out on your own or started your own business?
Oh, start on my own. I think it was 2016 or 2017.
So now you've been doing that. So let's say, between 6 and 7 years, and that's progressed. Now, as you've gone along, how are things progressed? Has it been one where it's been kind of a steady course, or what's been the evolution of the business? So kind of walk us through that and catch us up to where things are at today.
Oh yeah, so that was with the old brokerage I was referring to, and then we started
Oh.
franchise about 2020. So I shut the
Mhm.
business down, or shut the other business down, because this is my baby and all consuming. And it's been a great growth. Like, starting off, it's an odd industry, I'll tell you that. Like, even fundraising for it was a whole course of its own. Like, I reached out to 400 venture capital companies, I maybe got 3 responses back. And so I ended up having to go raise from angel investors to start, and then go back to VCs, and eventually had a great funding round that was venture backed. And then I had to go out and build the team and the product and all these things, and definitely a time consuming piece to do it right. But when we launched, we had an amazing launch. We had over 18 million in investment subscriptions, which was the largest launch ever for an alternative investing platform. And we've had all sorts of franchise brands reaching out to us, because this was something I had said from the get-go before we received our first dollar, which was franchisors are not really happy about these check writers that come in and write a check and they say, great, it'll run itself, because no business does. They really want owner operators that are in there every day and passionate, and like, this is their business. Just generally, those people don't have the money for it. And so we really separate the operators and where the capital comes from, so they can actually have true owner operators in there every day. And
Mhm.
yeah, and it's been great. We've had all these different franchisors reach out. We've got a couple more offerings that'll be launched by the end of the year, early next year. And we've got over 40,000 on the wait list for future offerings. So it's just been a great journey so far, but also very, very early.
No, well, sounds like a lot of great traction, exciting work, and a lot of fun yet along the way. And so now, if you're to kind of look now, or that's kind of where you're at today, if you're to project out the next 6 to 12 months, where do you see things headed, or kind of what's the next, or what's in the pipeline, or what's next for you?
Yeah, so 6 to 12 months from now, I mean, we're already in 2 different industries that we're investing in. I'd like to get that to at least five by 6 to 12 months from now. And we're trying to get to about 150 million on the platform, with some of these offerings that we've got coming. It's very doable, which we're excited for. And we want to get into even more bigger and bigger name brands, expand to more locations, expand our existing operators into more locations. And it really also get more of a focus on like geographic based funds. So like, I'm in Chicago, and so I want a Chicago fund. So where I go eat, get my hair cut, go work out at, all those things I own a piece of, and able to own and partake in something that is mine. And so a lot of exciting things, and also growing the team, which we're very excited for.
No, sounds like a lot of exciting things going on, and a lot yet to come. So sounds like that'll be a fun journey along the way. So now with that, now as we've kind of reached the present day of the journey, and even looking a bit into the future, great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask towards the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
Worst business decision was working with a vendor that, we'll say, did not deliver as promised. I was kind of promised everything and received, we'll say, far from that. And it was honestly one of the first things I had signed when we'd founded Franchise. So I didn't really know having a process of like having attorneys overlook every vendor contract. And so that's definitely what I learned, is that any new vendor, have the lawyers review the contract and be afraid to push back on all sorts of things.
No, that's awesome. So, and I are awesome that you learn from that. And I think that, that's kind of one, not awesome they had to go through it, but that you learn from it in the sense, I think that that's, one that's hard when you're getting into, especially when you're new into business or just getting started, everything from, hey, I don't know, what to look for in vendors or, service providers or other people I work with. And I think everybody thinks, hey, I know when, I can read people really well. And even if you can read people well, it just takes time and their experience and kind of going through some of those things to know what to look for and what may or may not, be a red flag in that. So I think that's a good or an easy mistake to make, but a great one to learn from.
Yeah, it is.
Now, the second question I'd like to ask is, so now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Live lean. I think people get excited for the aspect of like, oh, I'm able to do all these different things, but at a new startup, it's like you don't know what the future is going to hold, and it's good to like put yourself in the position of like, I need just what I need to survive, because really, like, the business is your livelihood, and so you should be really throwing yourself back into it to make sure it's going to put a lot of food on the table. And I'd say also is that like you're going to experience the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and you can't really let either affect you too much, or else it's just going to be a tough business going forward. And so you got to be prepared for it and just make sure you stay like even set in how you respond to things in the long run.
No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. So, well, now as we do wrap up the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yep. Best way is to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Kenny, and last name is Rose, spelled like the flower. But then also go check out franshares.com. It's like shares of franchises, and create an account, check it out, see if it's something that could make sense for you. But I'm always very big on LinkedIn too. So don't be afraid to reach out and let us know that you heard us from here.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, make a new connection, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been fun. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. So just go to inventiveguest.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And on that note, if you ever need help with your business along your journey with patents, trademarks, or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Kenny, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks, Devin. You too.